We live quiet lives, Gerald and I. That's what we always wanted when we left the city. Just peace and stillness, tucked into the crumbling arms of the countryside. Our home is old, far older than either of us. Stone walls that breathe in winter, floorboards that moan under your heel. It was my grandfather's house, and then my father's, and now ours. Nothing happens here. Which is why, when something did, it stuck. It was a Tuesday. I remember that clearly because it's the day Gerald drives into town for groceries and his prescription refills. I usually spend that time in the garden or rearranging something that doesn't need rearranging. That morning, I heard the clang of the old mail slot on the front door. It surprised me. We don't get much anymore. Not since most people we know have passed or moved away. I assumed it was junk, but it wasn't. It was a piece of folded paper, slightly crumpled and lined, like from a school notebook. On it was a child's drawing, crude but expressive. 3 stick figures, smiling beneath a yellow sun. A house, trees, a dog, I think, and names. The 2 taller figures were labeled Mom and Dad. The shorter one, in the middle, was labeled me, Timmy. My blood ran cold, and not for any reason I could immediately explain. It was just a kid's drawing. That's what I told myself. But something felt off. I called out to Gerald before realizing he wasn't home yet. I studied the drawing again. Timmy. We don't have a child. Never did. Not by choice. Just how things turned out. We had nieces and nephews once, but they're grown now, scattered across other lives and cities. Still, I couldn't shake it. The figures wore colors that matched what Gerald and I were wearing that morning. Gerald's flannel shirt, my green cardigan. Even the breakfast table in the corner of the page had 2 mugs and 1 small bowl, drawn with blue crayon. Ours were still sitting in the sink. I waited until Gerald came home. When I showed him the drawing, he laughed at first, said it must have been shoved in by mistake. Maybe a neighborhood kid? But there aren't any kids here, not anymore. We checked with the mailman the next day. He said he didn't put anything through our slot, just walked right past like usual. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the drawing on the counter, how oddly intimate it felt, like someone had been watching us. Not maliciously, just close. Too close. I didn't tell Gerald that I found another one the next morning, this time taped to the inside of our kitchen window. This drawing showed the 3 of us sitting on the porch with a new line scribbled beneath it. Thank you for letting me come back. The drawing stayed on the counter all night, despite my growing urge to toss it in the fire. Something about burning it felt wrong, like it would invite something worse. Gerald shrugged it off, still muttering about pranksters or bored teens. But we both knew there hadn't been children in this village for years. Not since the school closed, not since the last families moved away. Ours was a place of silence and age. I noticed Gerald getting twitchy by the afternoon. He claimed to hear something, soft thuds, dragging sounds above the ceiling. Probably just a squirrel, he muttered, standing beneath the attic door, eyes locked on the old wooden hatch in the hallway ceiling. It had always stuck a little when you pulled it down, but this time it came open easier than I remembered. The ladder creaked and groaned under his weight as he climbed up, flashlight in hand. I stayed downstairs, watching his feet disappear into the darkness above. There was a long silence. Too long. Gerald? I called. No answer. And then his voice echoed down, thin and shaky. Martha, come up here. You need to see this. My stomach dropped. I climbed up slowly, every step resisting me, the air growing colder the closer I got to the attic. When I pulled myself through the hatch, I saw Gerald kneeling in the far corner, his flashlight aimed at the floor. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. A neat circle of old children's toys, arranged meticulously like a ritual. Wooden blocks, a tin train with rusted wheels, a spinning top, and a cracked jack-in-the-box. In the very center was a small blue blanket, faded, moth-eaten, but carefully folded. A teddy bear missing one eye lay on top of it, arms stretched wide as if waiting for a hug. And each toy, each one had a yellowed paper tag tied to it. Scribbled in clumsy crayon were 5 letters, barely legible, but undeniably there. Timmy. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. Have you ever seen these before? Gerald asked, his voice hoarse. Number, never. They weren't here last winter when I came up to patch the roof, he said. I swear it, Martha. This wasn't here. He looked at me like he needed permission to be afraid. I didn't give it to him. Not out loud. But I stepped closer and said what neither of us wanted to hear. Someone put them here. Recently. That night, neither of us slept well. We didn't speak much over dinner. The creaks in the floorboards felt louder than usual. The wind outside didn't howl. It whispered. At 2:14 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tiny footsteps above our bed. Not the scurry of a squirrel, not the clumsy shuffle of a raccoon. These were patter-patter, soft and rhythmic, childlike, pacing, one side of the room to the other. Then stillness, and then came the voice. Faint, whispered, right above our heads. You found my toys. Now find me. After the attic, after the footsteps, after the voice, something inside our home had shifted. It's hard to explain, but it's as if the walls had begun to breathe. There was a heaviness in every room, a weight that followed you just out of sight. Gerald became quiet. Not just tired, not just stressed. Quiet. Like he was listening for something, even when there was nothing to hear. We avoided the attic after that night. We didn't speak of it. It sat above us like a tumor growing in the brain of the house, unseen but always pressing, always present. And then the guest room door opened. It had been locked for years. We used to keep it closed to avoid heating an empty space. The key had gone missing long ago. Yet one morning, as I passed by with a basket of folded towels, I saw the door slightly ajar, just enough for a thin slice of shadow to slip out. I stood there for a long time, not moving, just watching. Then I nudged the door open. The room I stepped into was not the one I remembered. The once empty space now held the distinct mark of a child's bedroom, an old one like something from a photograph faded with age. A tiny iron bed in the corner, carefully made, blue sheets with a pattern of stars, perfectly tucked, a low wooden dresser, chipped and sun-worn, shelves filled with picture books, some with torn covers. The smell of dust and baby powder lingered in the air. But it wasn't just furniture. It was the feeling. The room felt lived in, recent, like a child had just stepped out to use the bathroom and might return any moment. I froze when I saw the drawings. Crayon sketches covered the far wall, dozens of them, taped with care, all signed Timmy. Some were childlike, stick figures, houses, suns, but others were dark. A figure alone in the woods, a shadow behind a door, a scribbled face with hollow eyes, and then the photograph. It sat on the nightstand, a small silver frame, dulled with age. Inside was a picture of Gerald and me, younger, smiling, and holding the hand of a young boy. His face was blurry, almost smudged, like someone had pressed their thumb against the photo while it was still wet. But the label below was clear. My 6th birthday. Me, Mom, and Dad. I dropped the photo. The glass cracked. I don't remember backing out of the room, but I found myself in the hallway, staring at the door as it gently creaked closed behind me. I didn't touch it. I didn't breathe. When Gerald came home from the post office, I told him what I saw. He didn't even ask if I was sure. He just stood in silence and said, "It's open now?" Yes. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. He didn't go to the room that night. Neither did I. But we left the door unlocked. We didn't want to make it angry. Not again. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to soft humming. A lullaby I half remembered from childhood, but couldn't name. The sound came from the guest room. The next morning, the bed was unmade. It started with the crying. At first, it was faint, like wind slipping through the cracks of the old house. A soft, breathy sobbing that drifted through the vents and whispered behind the walls. I would hear it in the kitchen, then again in the hallway, and sometimes while brushing my teeth. Always distant, always childlike, always alone. Then came the whispers. "Don't leave me." I froze the first time I heard it. It was behind the wall near the staircase, just behind the old grandfather clock. A child's voice. Clear. Real. "Don't leave me. Not again." I stood there, rooted, unable to move or blink or breathe. When I finally did, I ran. Gerald was in the den, staring at the television, but the screen was blank. Static hummed gently, like a lullaby out of tune. He didn't even notice me enter. "I heard him," I said. "Timmy." His head slowly turned. His eyes looked different, as if he hadn't slept, or maybe had seen something he couldn't unsee. "I've been hearing him too," he said. That should have been the worst of it, but it wasn't. Gerald started having episodes, short bursts of confusion. He'd wander into the guest room and just stand there, looking down at the bed, his hand trembling at his side. One morning I found him standing outside, staring at the garden, murmuring. I didn't mean to hurt him. I was just trying to stop the crying. When I called his name, he snapped out of it. Didn't remember going outside at all. He started losing time, half an hour here, an hour there. He once woke up in the attic, curled up on the blue blanket, clutching the one-eyed teddy bear to his chest. We don't know how he got there. I helped him down, but he wouldn't look at me. That same night, I found myself in the guest room, without knowing why. I had sat in the rocking chair, the one I swore wasn't there before, and I was humming. A lullaby. The words escaped me, but the tune came effortlessly. My hand moved as if on its own, gently rocking the chair back and forth. No one was in the bed, but it felt like someone should be. I stayed there for hours, in a trance, until Gerald pulled me away. "What are you doing?" he asked, panic in his voice. I looked down at my lap and realized I had been holding one of Timmy's drawings, a newer one I hadn't seen before, one he must have left just for me. It showed a woman sitting in a chair, rocking a stick figure boy wrapped in a blue blanket. Above their heads, written in shaky crayon, were the words, "Mommy sings to me again. I love her more now." The next morning, Gerald said something I still can't erase from my mind. "I think there was an accident," he whispered. "I think we're forgetting something we're not supposed to." I asked what he meant, but he didn't answer. He just looked at the wall and smiled. The house had gone quiet. Not in the comforting country kind of way we used to enjoy. The hush after a long day. The silence of trees holding their breath. No, this was different. It was the kind of silence that watched you. Gerald was barely sleeping. He walked the halls at night with a flashlight, whispering to himself. Sometimes I'd find him crouched at corners of the house, pressing his ear to the wall like he was listening for something. Sometimes he smiled while doing it. I kept trying to hold on to normalcy, but it was unraveling, and so was I. It was around 4 a.m. when I had the dream. I saw a crib in a dark room, a small hand reaching up. I leaned in to see the baby's face, but when I did, the hand grabbed my wrist and pulled. I woke up on the attic ladder, halfway into the crawl space. I don't remember climbing. I tried to go back to sleep, but something urged me back up there. Something more than fear. It was like my hands knew before I did. I took a flashlight and a scarf and went up. The attic was freezing, and somehow it smelled of powdered milk and old breath. I shivered, moved past the toy circle we hadn't dared disturb since the first night. Then I noticed it, a loose board tucked into the far corner. I pried it up. Beneath the floor was a tin lockbox, rusted, but not untouched by time. Its lid gave easily. Inside, I found papers, faded, yellowed at the edges. I scanned them in the flashlight's beam. An adoption application, dated 1972, for a boy named Timothy Harold Lorne. The prospective parents, Martha and Gerald Whitlock. Address, our house. Signature, Mine, Gerald's. I read it over and over again, but it made no sense. I never signed this. I would remember. Wouldn't I? I turned the final page. A letter of rejection, dated 3 months later. Application denied. Psychological assessment flagged inconsistencies. Applicants claimed they had already been raising the child in dreams and memory. That sentence made me dizzy. My mouth tasted like copper. I sat down hard on the attic floor, and then I saw it. On the back of the final document, written in thick crayon, red and smeared, like a child's angry scrawl. They lied. They hurt me, but I'm still their son. I dropped the box and scrambled back down the ladder. When I told Gerald, he didn't look surprised. He didn't even ask to see the papers. He just said, I think we almost had him. What do you mean? I asked. I remember holding someone, he whispered, voice shaking. A little boy, blue blanket. He liked trains, but I don't know if that's a memory or a dream, or something he put in my head. I sat next to him on the couch. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My skin felt too tight, like I wasn't even inside my own body anymore. Later that night, I found a new drawing on our refrigerator. This one showed 2 tall stick figures, Mom and Dad, their faces drawn as sad, hollow ovals. Between them was Timmy, smiling. Beneath his feet was a jagged red line, and under the drawing, in the same uneven hand, this time, don't forget me. The days were beginning to blur. I would wake up to drawings I didn't remember receiving, sometimes tucked into the folds of the bed sheets, sometimes taped onto the inside of the bathroom mirror. Gerald's hands shook constantly now. He spent hours pacing the hallway outside Timmy's room, murmuring apologies to no one, staring at the door like it might breathe. And one morning, a new drawing appeared. This one hit different. It was left on our breakfast table, between our mugs before either of us had entered the room. That meant it had already been there when we woke up. That meant someone had put it there while we slept. The drawing showed a boy lying under a field of red and purple flowers, arms folded over his chest, eyes closed. A little speech bubble hovered above his head. I sleep here. This is my safe place. In the corner, written in a crooked scrawl, go outside. You'll remember. I looked at Gerald. He was pale. He already knew where. We stood in the backyard, staring at the rose bush, the one Martha's mother had planted, the one that bloomed wildly and unpredictably every summer, the one that never seemed to die, no matter the weather. Gerald didn't speak. He just went into the shed, grabbed a shovel, and began digging. The earth was surprisingly loose, like it wanted to give something up. With each shovel full of dirt, the rosebush seemed to wither slightly, petals curling inward, the color bleeding out of them. 6 feet down, the shovel hit something. A soft thud. A burlap-wrapped bundle, child-sized. The fabric was old, soaked, and decaying. Gerald dropped the shovel and fell to his knees. I couldn't move. My lungs stopped working. We called the police. They came, they brought dogs. They questioned us, they took photographs. But they were quiet, unsettled. No one made eye contact. They promised an autopsy and said they'd be in touch. For a moment, it felt like a weight had been lifted. That night, Gerald slept through for the first time in weeks. I dared to believe it might be over, until I walked past Timmy's room. The door was open again. The bed was made again. The drawings were all back on the walls. Clean, flat, unweathered. And sitting in the center of the bed was the one-eyed teddy bear. I turned to call for Gerald, only to freeze when I saw the hallway mirror. Written across the glass, in what looked like crayon dipped in blood, were the words, "You tried to hide me again. That was mean." I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just stared. Because beneath the writing, taped perfectly in the center of the mirror, was a new drawing. One that hadn't been there before the police arrived. It showed 2 stick figures standing over a child buried in the ground. Both adults were smiling. The child's face, however, had been drawn in angry red ink, his mouth wide open. Above the image, in block letters, Now you have to play with me forever." We stopped pretending we were okay. After the drawing in the mirror, the one showing us smiling over Timmy's buried body, something in both of us broke. No more denial. No more waiting for it to pass. We had to leave. But the house wouldn't let us. It began slowly. Doors sticking shut, even ones we never locked. The kitchen window nailed itself shut overnight. Gerald swore he saw the front gate move, close itself, as he tried to walk out. One night, every light bulb in the house shattered at once, plunging us into darkness with only the sound of a child laughing from the basement. We didn't even have a basement. Gerald started making plans. He packed bags, filled the car with gas, and mapped the fastest road out of town. He said we wouldn't even bother trying to sell the place. We'd burn it to the ground first if we had to. That was the first time he ever mentioned fire. "I don't care if it takes us with it," he said, eyes hollow. "This house dies with him." We agreed to leave the next morning. But that night, the house came alive. The walls shifted. We could hear them groaning, pressing inward. Our bedroom door vanished. The hallway where the guest room once was? Just smooth wall now, as if it had never existed. The power died completely. And in the silence, the house began to speak. Not through walls. Not through whispers. But through mirrors. Every mirror in the house, cracked or clean, began to glow faintly, like someone was holding a flashlight behind them. And one by one, words began to appear, written in slow, invisible strokes that revealed themselves with frost. "I'll be in your new home too. You can't leave your son behind. Not again." Gerald started crying. I hadn't seen him cry since the day his brother died. His hands trembled. He began scratching at the wall where the guest room used to be, mumbling, "We didn't mean to. We didn't mean to." Then we heard it. The sound of a small, shuffling step on the wood floor. I turned, and there he was, Timmy. Not a shadow, not a whisper. A boy, pale as porcelain, lips blue, skin clinging to bones like paper on wire. His head tilted just slightly as he looked at us. His eyes, they weren't angry. They were sad. And then he spoke, in that soft, breathy voice that echoed like a memory. "I just wanted you to say goodbye. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was survival. But I stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Timmy," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know where you came from, or why you chose us. But I'm sorry. You didn't deserve to be forgotten." He looked at me, really looked. His lip trembled. Then he turned to Gerald. "You used to read to me," he said, until I cried too loud. Gerald collapsed to his knees. "I don't remember doing anything to you," he sobbed. "But if I did, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." There was silence for a moment, a heavy pause. Then Timmy blinked slowly and whispered, "Then you can go." And he vanished, just like that. The mirrors all cracked at once. The house groaned one final time, and then it was just a house again. Still, cold, empty. We didn't wait for the morning. We grabbed the gasoline, poured it through every room, over the toys, the attic, the guest room, the kitchen, the photo frames. Gerald lit the match. The flames felt cleansing. We didn't look back. We didn't sleep the night the house burned. We didn't speak either. The flames crackled like brittle bones snapping in the cold. The fire crawled up the walls, licking the windows, devouring the old wallpaper, the dusty photographs, the furniture older than either of us. The toys in the attic were the last to catch. We watched through the windshield in silence. There was no screaming, no spirits pouring out into the sky, no explosion of energy, just the slow, controlled death of a haunted memory, the house that had never truly been ours. Gerald sat behind the wheel, his hands trembling on the steering wheel even though we hadn't started moving yet. The light of the fire danced across his face, giving him an almost childlike glow. tired, hollow, but lighter, somehow. I don't remember any of it, he finally said, but I feel like I should. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was staring at the attic window, the one still visible through the thick smoke, glowing faintly orange behind the soot-smeared glass. And then I saw him, Timmy, standing in the attic, watching us, pale as before, arms by his sides, a soft, sad smile on his lips. And this time, he didn't speak. He just raised a hand and waved. The fire swallowed the window. The roof collapsed. The entire top floor crumbled in on itself. The boy was gone. And still, we didn't speak. Not as Gerald turned the ignition. Not as we rolled down the gravel drive one final time. Not as we passed the village sign. Its paint flaked and faded with age. We drove until the house was nothing but a shadow in the rearview mirror. And only then did I breathe again. It wasn't relief. Not exactly. It was something closer to grief. But not for a child we'd lost. Not for a memory stolen from us. Not even for the life we were leaving behind. It was for a boy who had never existed. A boy who had waited far too long for a goodbye. We never spoke of him again. Never told anyone. Never tried to explain. We bought a small cottage 3 towns over. No attic. No guest room. No mirrors in the hallway. And whenever we pass by the rose bushes at the garden center, we don't stop. We just keep walking. Because deep down, we know that house didn't just burn. It was released. The nightmares faded in time. The drawings stopped appearing. The humming was gone. But sometimes, on nights when the wind presses against the windows just right, I still think I hear it. Thank you for letting me go. And every now and then, I still find myself looking over my shoulder. Just once. Just to make sure he's not still following. But he isn't. He finally let us go. And we finally let him go too. We never had a son, but we still had to let him go.